Hello everyone, welcome to another video where I will explain to you. This video is intended to show how you can improve your chess for beginners. So this video is focused on beginners who want to improve their chess. There is a previous video I made. If you haven't watched it yet, there's a video where I explain how to play chess in a very practical way on this board. And now I will show you how you can improve your chess if you are a beginner. So let's go. We've already seen that chess is a game of war. And what do you have to do in a war? You have to put your knights, your warriors forward, right? To go to the battlefield so you can attack the enemy king. So what happens? In chess, we have the small center. And this here is the large center. And what are you going to do? You will try to place your pawns, your pieces in this center. The more control you have over this center here, the more attack power you will have, the more you will be able to accomplish in the game of chess. Alright? So what happens? We have the openings, because chess is divided into three parts: the beginning, the middle, and the end game. At the beginning, you have to get your pieces off the board. That's the objective. So what are we going to do? At the start of the game, you need to choose openings that allow you to control the center, that let you quickly move your pieces, so you can secure your king by castling. So that is the main objective. So don't start making up too much. Later on, you will get to know the chess openings, which are vast. The openings, there are many openings. It's a very, very broad range of openings. So you can choose one that you identify with more, whether it's more offensive or more defensive. But for now, you need to understand that you have to control the center. So what happens? For you who are just starting, you need to choose an opening that controls the center, which is why people choose either e4. You see? e4. Here, look, 4. So e4, or people start with d5, or people generally start with the knights, playing either the knight here or the knight here, right? These are openings that are good, very good, because you are controlling the center and already developing the pieces. So let's go. When you start with e4, it's a more aggressive move. Because you can already develop a bishop here, you will be able to castle by moving just these two pieces. And it is considered more aggressive than the d5, d4 move as well, okay? So yeah, you choose your style. So let's put e4 here. The opponent responds with e4 as well, you controlling the center. So look, if I take and move my knight here, 1, 2, turn, I move my knight here, right? I'm already threatening to capture one of the opponent's pawns, right? And he can respond by defending this pawn. You see that here he is defending. I take, look, and I'm going to move the bishop. If I move it here, it's the Italian opening. If I move it here, if when moving the bishop, I place it here, it's the Spanish opening, or Ruy Lopez. So let's suppose I chose to move it here, right? And the opponent then moves here, already threatening to capture this little pawn of mine. Well, I'm going to defend it here. I defend my pawn, and the opponent moves his bishop. And look, I'm going to castle now. 1, 2, move the rook to the side. Look how cool. So, in this example I gave you, what did I do? I developed my pieces already, right? Now the black can castle as well. Look, I move a knight here. It defends here. I move a bishop. He moves his bishop. Just an example, okay, folks? And I move my queen here. All right? Then let's say he drives my bishop away. Otherwise, he'll capture my bishop next. I move back, and he places a rook here, and he does this, expanding this side of the board. And I move my rook here. Look, now I want to show you what happened here. This is an opening. It was fictional, a game I played with myself, but to show you an example of what you more or less have to do. You have to control the center, develop your pieces. Look, I moved the bishops, already positioned them. The knights are already in play and place the rooks in the center. My king is already safe because he's no longer in the middle of the board. He's in a corner, already castled. Alright? Look how cool. I'm already prepared here to be setting up. Yeah, preparing to start an attack or think about what I'm going to do from now on, all right? So this is just a principle for you to have an idea of how to develop your pieces. So one thing we're going to do, try to control the center and look, I'll show you here, try to develop the pieces as quickly as possible. If you do this basic setup here, you can already do well in a game of chess. It's a principle for you to start understanding what you need to do. Of course, it will be very complex. It will depend on the variations, the openings that the person will make, but this already gives you a general idea of what you need to be doing in a game of chess, which is more or less what people do, right? So look here, there are other variations for you to be able to move the bishop. You can move the bishop here, see? It's a safe way too, called fianchetto. The opponent plays and you, see, move the bishop here. You see that it's already attacking along this diagonal? Great. Then the opponent, see, has already controlled the center too, already moved to prepare to bring out his pieces, and you moved the knight. Let's suppose he plays here, you come, see, and castle this way. Look how cool. Another way for you to bring your pieces into the game, and you are developing your pieces through the fianchetto, right? So look, another thing I'm going to show you here now. The knight is a piece that you sometimes need to move before the bishop. And I'll show you that, and the more towards the center it is, the more active it will be. Take a look. I'm going to move my knight over here to this corner here, right? Look, you see that it only has these two squares here, and going back, if I had moved my knight over here, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, it has 4 squares. So we usually say that the knight needs to be as central as possible. Since it is a slow piece, which will have to move, then go there, then reach the other side of the board, you need to place it as centrally as possible, right? So between moving the knight here or here when you take it out, it's better at the beginning to choose to move the knight here. Of course, it will depend on what the opponent plays, but generally speaking, it would be to place the knight more towards the center. All right, folks? And the bishop is closed in, so the more you can place it on the diagonal, the better. So if you take and do this here, look, you did it. Then place the bishop here, then the opponent plays. Right, let's suppose he's making the move, but you did this here. Look, you trapped your bishops. Your bishops are not on good diagonals. Let's suppose you did this here. You trapped your bishops, they are not on diagonals to be playing, right? And besides that, you trapped the knight from moving out. You'll have to force the knight to play to the corner, which is not good. So, let's try to keep the bishop on open diagonals. How does this work? Look, I played, the opponent played too. I placed the bishop here. Look, the bishop is already on an open diagonal, already preparing to give a check, some strategic plan over at the opponent's king. All right, so that's it. Let's go then. Now you, for example, let's suppose you played here. E4, he played. E5, you played here. And he defended here, right? Then you say, look, the knight can come here to take. This one is very basic, folks, but I'm going to explain to you why the knight wouldn't be good to take here. Look, he captured a pawn, and the opponent captured my knight. What is worth more? Look, in chess we know that the objective is to checkmate, but there's a rough value for each piece, just to give you an idea of exchanges in chess. So, folks, I set it up roughly like this. Let's put it aside here. The pawn is worth 1 point. The knight is worth 3 points. The bishop is also worth 3 points, right? The rook is worth 5 points. And the queen is worth 9 points. And the king is worth nothing, because you don't capture the king, you have to protect your king, right? So the king doesn't have a point value. So look, this is just to give you an idea of exchanges, because what really matters is the checkmate. Look, it's just to give you an idea that more or less, if you take an opponent's rook and he takes a knight and a lone bishop, it's more or less a fair trade because you're taking 5 points, right? And he's taking 6. It's more or less equal. If you took a rook and a pawn for this, it's more or less a fair trade. You took 2 rooks, right? You took here, look, you took 2 rooks and the opponent took a queen. Look, it's a more or less equal trade, 10 points and 9 points, okay? It's a reasonable trade, right? It's just to give you an idea of the trade, what is worth more or less if you're making a good trade or not. Of course, later on, there will be what we call sacrifices, which is when you give up a much smaller piece, depending on the timing, to make an extraordinary move, right? But roughly to give you an idea of the trade, it's more or less like this. Of course, this is just to give you an idea, a basis of what you will be trading. But what matters is the checkmate. It doesn't matter if the person has. Look here. The person goes there and tries with all the pieces. I'll show you here. Look, the king is right here. The person has all the pieces. And look, let's put an example here for you to understand. The person has all the pieces. Traded a lot, has a rook. Look. Let's put the black pieces here. Look, black has several. Has a queen, has a rook, has another rook. And you only have a little rook, right? Look at how many more pieces he has. And you come here, look. Checkmate, right? Because look, do you see how it is here? Threatened to capture the king. And there's nowhere for him to go. Because he's trapped back here, look. There's nowhere for him to go, look. The 2 squares he has, no piece can defend him. So, see, you have many more pieces than the opponent, but you won the game by giving checkmate. So, pieces are for you to have a sense of exchange, but what wins is the checkmate, alright? Same thing, if you have here, look, on the other side, let's suppose it was like this here, look. You have a bunch of pieces here, and he only has a little rook here, right? He comes here, look. Check, threatened to capture the king. Look, he still can move the knight back, but you come here, look. Check, threatened to capture the king. He can't go here because the rook still covers it, and he can't go there because the rook also covers it, so checkmate. It didn't help at all that you have one more rook than him, alright? But like, if at the start of the game you have an idea, should I exchange my pieces or not? You can already start doing these little calculations about the value of the pieces that I shared with you. Alright? So that's it, folks. That's what I wanted to convey. More or less how you would develop the game. At the beginning, right of the game, for those who are real beginners, to have an idea of exchanges, how to set up the board, and start initiating the game. Alright? Thank you very much. Thanks everyone. Hey, give a thumbs up here, it helps me a lot. I really liked the video where I explained chess. You can share it with someone who wants to learn chess. And I was very happy because you gave a thumbs up and helped the video grow. Alright then, thank you very much to those who helped, those who gave this nice feedback, because I have now produced another video. And if you are enjoying it, write here that you are enjoying it, as I will make many videos for beginners too, okay? Thanks, thank you very much.